The year is 1200 BC. The world does not yet know philosophy. It does not know democracy. It does not know the white marble temples tourists photograph today, that Greece has not been invented yet. The Greece that exists right now is something far older, far stranger, and by almost every measure, far more extreme. This is the Bronze Age, and at its absolute peak, a handful of warrior kings control wealth so staggering, so militarized, so deliberately theatrical that even 3,000 years later, archaeologists are still pulling gold out of the ground and struggling to explain how it got there. You are one of those kings. Not a philosopher, not a politician, a warlord with a palace, a ledger, a fleet of ships, and a divine bloodline you will remind everyone of before the day is out. Let us walk through that day. You wake before dawn inside the Megaron. This is the great hall of your palace, the beating heart of everything you control. The Megaron is not a bedroom. It is a throne room, a feasting hall, a court, and a temple, all compressed into a single, massive space. A circular hearth burns at its center, permanently. It has been burning for years. The fire is not decorative. It is a living declaration that this household is occupied, that the king is present, that the gods of this place are being honored around the clock. The columns holding the ceiling above you are painted in deep red and blue, covered in spiral patterns that repeat endlessly around the walls. There is no natural light. The only illumination comes from the hearth and from small oil lamps burning along the walls. The smell is smoke, olive oil, and the faint mineral edge of the bronze weapons hung beside the door. Every palace in the Bronze Age Greek world follows this same layout: Mycenae, Tiryns, Pylos, Thebes. Each one is a variation on the same design: Megaron at the center, storerooms radiating outward, massive stone walls surrounding all of it. The walls at Mycenae are built from stones so enormous that later Greeks, finding them centuries after the civilization had collapsed, assumed they could only have been built by giants. They called them cyclopean walls. The stones were simply too large for ordinary human beings to have moved. They were not built by giants. They were built by a civilization with enough organized labor, enough administrative power, and enough ruthless political will to move mountains if the king decided mountains needed moving. That king is you, and your day begins with gold. The first thing you do each morning is not eat. It is not pray, although prayer will come. The first thing you do is review the tablets. Your palace employs a team of scribes who write in a script called Linear B, pressed into wet clay, baked hard, filed in storerooms. These tablets track everything: every jar of olive oil in your storage magazines, every bronze sword issued to every soldier, every sheep on every estate under your control, every woman working in your textile workshops, every ration of grain distributed to every laborer. Bronze Age. Greek palaces are not simply homes, they are total economic systems. Everything produced in your territory flows through your palace and back out again under your control. The farmers outside your walls do not own their harvests. The craftsmen in your workshops do not own their tools. You do, and your scribes record every single transaction in triplicate. Archaeologists excavating Pylos found over 1,000 of these tablets in a single archive room: records of flax, records of rowers assigned to ships, records of women from different ethnic groups working in palace industries. The palace did not just control the economy, it was the economy. After the tablets, the offerings, religion at this level of Bronze Age society is not a private spiritual practice. It is a political performance of the highest order. You walk to the small shrine at the far end of the Megaron and pour a libation of wine. Not cheap local wine. This is wine mixed with honey, imported herbs, fragrant oils. The liquid hits the stone and steams slightly in the cool morning air. The gods you are addressing are not distant abstractions. They are neighbors. They are family. Zeus, king of the gods, lord of weather and thunder, the divine equivalent of yourself in the celestial hierarchy. Poseidon, who controls the sea, your trade ships depend on. Hera, his queen, who has opinions about everything and forgets nothing. Athena, goddess of strategic intelligence and craft, patron of the most important skills a palace civilization needs to survive. And beneath these great Olympians sit hundreds of smaller divine powers, local spirits of springs and mountains and thresholds, all of whom also require acknowledgement. Because here is the thing about the Greek gods that matters when you actually live in their world, rather than read about them from a safe distance 3,000 years later. They are not symbols. They are not metaphors. They are real present, dangerous, and extraordinarily easy to offend. They walk among humans. They take human form without warning. The stranger who arrives at your gate asking for hospitality might be a god testing you. The beautiful woman on the shoreline might be a goddess with a specific agenda. The dream you had last night might have been a direct message from Zeus, delivered personally, with consequences for ignoring it. You do not have the luxury of skepticism, not when the storms that sink your grain ships can be sent by Poseidon as punishment for a forgotten offering, not when the plague that could sweep through your palace depends on whether you have offended Apollo recently. The gods are a political reality, and managing your relationship with them requires the same constant attention as managing your relationship with rival kings. By mid-morning, the palace is fully awake. The workshops are running. The palace textile industry alone employs hundreds of women who card wool, spin thread, and weave fabric at an industrial scale. The bronze smiths are working in their forges, casting spear tips and sword blades and greaves, the shin armour that every serious warrior wears. The perfume makers are processing imported resins and oils into the luxury goods that will be sent as diplomatic gifts to kings in Egypt, Cyprus, the Levant. And then there are the storage magazines. If you want to understand what Bronze Age wealth actually looked like in physical terms, walk into the storerooms beneath a palace like Knossos on Crete. Enormous ceramic storage jars, taller than a man, called pithoi, lined up in rows the length of a city block. Each one full. Olive oil in this room, wine in that one, grain beyond that, dried figs, honey, wool, bronze ingots shaped like stretched animal hides, each one representing a unit of exchange recognized across the entire Mediterranean world. The wealth flowing through these rooms is not accumulated for show. It is fuel. It powers the military machine, feeds the artisans, funds the diplomatic gifts, supplies the ships. A Bronze Age palace economy runs on stored commodities the way a modern state runs on currency. At noon, you eat, and eating at this level is its own kind of statement. The food at a Bronze Age palatial feast draws from every corner of the known world. Saffron from the volcanic island of Hera, so valuable it appears in palace records by weight. Spices from the Levant arriving on the same merchant ships that carry your olive oil outward. Ivory from Africa transformed by your craftsmen into carved furniture inlays and decorative panels. Wine from the best estates on Crete and the mainland mixed with honey and herbs, according to recipes your chief cook has memorized across decades of service. The animals slaughtered for serious palace feasts are carefully recorded. Oxen, sheep, pigs. The records from Pylos document preparations for a feast involving hundreds of animals and thousands of litres of wine. This was not a dinner party. It was a political event, a projection of power, a reminder to everyone present of exactly whose territory they were standing in. You eat on furniture inlaid with ivory and glass paste. You drink from vessels of beaten gold. The Linear B tablets record ivory-inlaid chairs, footstools of ebony and silver, tables of stone and precious materials. The luxury goods found in Bronze Age palace contexts represent trade networks spanning 3 continents. A single grave excavated at Mycenae contained gold death masks, silver vessels, bronze weapons inlaid with gold and silver imagery, amber beads from the Baltic Sea, and ivory from Africa, in one tomb, one man. After the midday meal, the military business. Because everything else, the food, the scribes, the workshops, the gold, it all exists in service of one ultimate function: war. The Bronze Age. Greek world is not peaceful. It has never been peaceful. The relationship between neighboring palace kingdoms is a permanent cold war that heats up regularly into actual campaigns. You raid, you counter-raid. You form alliances through marriage and then break them through murder. You build those massive walls not because they are beautiful, but because you have personally seen what happens to a palace that does not have them. Your warriors train in the afternoon on the flat ground below the citadel walls. These are not conscript farmers handed a spear and pointed at the enemy. The elite warriors of a Bronze Age Greek palace are professional soldiers from aristocratic families, men who have trained since childhood, who own their own bronze armour, who know their position in the battle line the way a musician knows a song. That armour is worth dwelling on for a moment. A full bronze panoply, a proper warrior's complete set of armour, represents an enormous concentration of resources. Bronze is not a naturally occurring material. It is an alloy of copper and tin that requires both metals to be mined, transported, smelted, and worked by skilled craftsmen. The copper deposits of Cyprus feed palace smiths across the Aegean. The tin comes from even further, Afghanistan, Britain, Anatolia, sources that required maintained trade networks to access. To put a warrior in full bronze armor is to make a statement about supply chains. Every soldier on your battlefield is a walking advertisement for the reach of your commercial and diplomatic networks. And then there are the chariots. The Bronze Age. Greek elite do not fight on foot if they can avoid it. The chariot is the military technology that defines aristocratic warfare in this period. A light vehicle of wood and leather, pulled by two horses, carrying a driver and a warrior. It does not operate the way Hollywood depicts. It is not a vehicle for mowing down enemy infantry. It is transport, a mobile firing platform for the elite warrior to arrive at his chosen ground in speed and style, dismount, and fight. Your palace records list chariot wheels and chariot bodies and chariot horses in separate inventories, tracked and maintained like the modern equivalent of a military vehicle fleet. The existence of chariots in a palace inventory is itself a status indicator. Only the wealthiest kingdoms can breed the horses, import the wood, maintain the craftsmen, and supply the grain to feed the animals year-round. Late afternoon, the harbour. No Bronze Age palace kingdom survives without the sea, and yours is no different. Your harbour below the citadel holds a fleet of merchant vessels and warships, the line between the two being somewhat theoretical, since merchant ships become warships on short notice when the situation requires it. The Bronze Age. Mediterranean is the most commercially active body of water in the ancient world. The Uluburan shipwreck, a merchant vessel that sank off the coast of Turkey around 1300 BC, was carrying tin and copper ingots, ebony logs from Africa, glass ingots from Egypt, spices, resin, gold jewelry, ivory, a stone anchor, fine pottery from Cyprus and Canaan, and personal items belonging to at least two high-status passengers. One ship, one voyage, a snapshot of a world in constant, intensive commercial motion. Your agents are on that sea right now, buying, selling, carrying diplomatic gifts from you to the king of Alatia, modern Cyprus, returning with raw materials your craftsmen need, occasionally raiding a coastline that you have a grievance with and can plausibly describe afterward as a defensive military operation. As the sun drops toward the horizon, you receive a messenger from a neighboring kingdom. This is the moment that defines the entire social architecture of Bronze Age elite life. The concept of xenia, guest friendship, the sacred law of hospitality that governs how every palace treats visitors. When a stranger or an envoy arrives at your gate, you do not question them before feeding them. You do not ask their business before offering them a bath, fresh clothing, a place at your table. The law of xenia requires that the guest be treated as sacred before any practical conversation occurs. And this is not merely good manners. It is a survival mechanism for a world without courts, without police, without international law. The only protection a traveller has far from home is the universal agreement that hosts will not harm guests. Zeus himself enforces this compact. He is called Zeus Xenios, protector of guests and strangers, and the stories of what happens to kings who violate that protection are horrifying enough to keep most people in line. This is why, when a young prince of Troy named Paris accepts hospitality from Menelaus, king of Sparta, and then leaves with his host's wife in the night, the reaction across the Greek world is not simply outrage at a romantic betrayal. It is the same horror you would feel watching someone desecrate a temple. The sacred law that makes your civilization function, the agreement that allows you to send agents to foreign courts and know they will come home alive, has been violated so completely that the offense cannot go unanswered. Not because Menelaus particularly requires 10 years of warfare to soothe his personal feelings, but because if this violation stands unpunished, the entire framework collapses. Every guest friendship in the Aegean world becomes worthless overnight. Evening, the feast. The Great Feast of the Bronze Age Palace is the single most important social technology the aristocracy possesses. It is how alliances are built, how loyalty is maintained, how status is communicated, how the gods are incorporated into the business of running a kingdom. The Megaron fills your warriors, your administrators, your allied nobles from neighboring territories, the high-ranking servants who run the palace machinery, all of them take their places in the hall. The fire at the center roars. Slaves carry in enormous bronze cauldrons of roasted meat. The wine craters, large mixing vessels of bronze or decorated pottery, are filled, and the wine is cut with water by your cupbearers and distributed to every man in the hall. The food comes first, then the conversation, then the gifts. Gift exchange at the palatial level is not generosity. It is a formal language, a way of communicating status, obligation, alliance, and territorial claim without ever saying any of those words directly. The gold cup you give to a visiting noble is a message. The bronze tripod he sends in return is a reply. The weapons given to a warrior after a successful raid are an acknowledgement of loyalty and a claim on his future service. Every object moving through these transactions has been recorded somewhere by someone pressing a reed into wet clay. Then the singer begins. Every great palace employs a bard, a singer of tales who holds in memory the accumulated heroic history of your people. He accompanies himself on a lyre and sings of past wars, ancestral glories, the deeds of kings who came before you. These stories are not entertainment in the casual modern sense. They are living documents of political reality. They tell everyone in the hall who they are, where they come from, what kind of courage is expected of them, and what the gods reward. The stories he sings are about men like Achilles, the son of the sea goddess Thetis and the mortal king Pylos, raised to be the supreme expression of everything this civilization worships: speed, strength, glory in battle, the willingness to trade a long, comfortable life for a short one so brilliant it will outlast memory itself. And the gods who move behind these men like weather systems. Thetis petitioning Zeus on her son's behalf while the Greek army bleeds on the Trojan shore. Athena holding Achilles back from murder at the precise moment his hand moves to his sword, invisible to everyone except him, the cold weight of divine intervention mistaken for his own better judgment. Apollo moving through the Greek camp like a plague wind, systematically dismantling the confidence of an army that has forgotten to be afraid of the things it should be afraid of. The gods in these stories are not managing events from a comfortable distance. They are in the dirt with the warriors, invested in specific outcomes for personal reasons, furious at slights delivered centuries before the current generation was born, capable of redirecting the outcome of a battle with a single whispered word in the right ear. To sit in this hall and hear those stories is to understand that the divine and the political are the same thing. The reason you poured that libation at dawn was the same reason you maintain your alliance with the king of Argos. You are managing relationships with powerful entities who have long memories and considerable leverage over your survival. Late in the night, after the feast, you walk alone to the top of the citadel wall. The sea is visible to the south, black and enormous, catching starlight. Below you, the palace lights are going out one by one. Your storerooms contain enough oil and grain and bronze to sustain a siege for months. Your warriors sleep in houses inside the walls. Your scribes have filed the day's tablets. Your fleet rests in the harbour. And somewhere out there, across the Aegean, across the same dark water your trading ships cut through every season, other kings are doing the same calculation you are doing right now. How long does this hold? The Bronze Age palatial civilization you stand at the top of is the most sophisticated and powerful the world has yet produced. Its trade networks are global, its administrative systems are extraordinary, its military technology is generations ahead of anything outside its borders, and it will be gone in 50 years. Not conquered, not replaced by something superior, simply collapsed. The palaces burned, the writing system forgotten, the trade networks severed, the scribes and their tablets buried under rubble that nobody will excavate for 3,000 years. The exact cause remains one of the great unresolved arguments in archaeology. Climate disruption, the sea peoples, mysterious raiders who struck the entire eastern Mediterranean at once, internal rebellion, systems collapse, the catastrophic failure of a civilization so tightly interconnected that when any single piece fails, all the pieces fail together. What survives the collapse is the stories. The poets who come after, working without palaces, without scribes, without bronze, carrying only memory and a lyre, hold on to the images of what the world had been. The gold-rich citadels, the ships numbered in the hundreds, the warriors in bronze armour who fought under the watching eyes of gods, the siege that lasted 10 years because one king's honour required it. Those stories will travel for centuries by mouth before anyone writes them down, and when they are finally written down in an alphabet borrowed from the Phoenicians because the old script has been completely forgotten, they will describe this world you are standing in right now. The great walls, the feasting halls, the gift-giving, the divine presences behind every significant event, the warriors who knew exactly what they were trading away and traded it anyway. You stand on the wall of your citadel in 1200 BC. The fire in the Megaron is still burning. The sea moves in the dark below. Your gold is in the storerooms. Your ships are in the harbour. The world you have built is, at this exact moment, complete. And the poet who will describe it to the future has not yet been born. But he is coming. See the Iliad story in the Paladin app, out now.